Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Game Maker Studio tutorials for the absolute beginner. My name is Respawn, and today what I want to do is get the vertical collision working for our basic platforming game. So, this is a rather complicated process, but what I'm going to do is guide you through every step in a basic way as possible. So the first thing I want you to do is open up our object. Remembering from the last episode, we created OBJ player, and we implemented the left and the right controls. But today, what we're going to be doing, we're going to be using the step event, because the step event occurs every time the game updates. And every time the game updates, we want to check if there is a collision. So to do that, click the Add Event button and you will see Step. Simply click that and then click Step. We don't need Begin Step or End Step there for advanced things. So just click Step. And then this will add our new event into OBJ Player. So now, the first thing we want to do, we want to go into the Move tab, and where it says Set Vertical Speed here, what we want the player to do is essentially, if they're in the air, accelerate until they, to a terminal velocity until they actually hit the ground. So, what we can actually do, because the amount of time the player is going to be in the air is not very long at all. We don't really need to check the vertical speed for this. So all we can do is make sure relative is checked and then set it to something like 0.4, like so. And then if I put or move the player in the room, let's just put him there for example, and then run the game. This will mean that the player will gradually accelerate over time. So there he is, he's accelerating, and then he's just falling off the screen. So that is essentially adding 0.4 to his current vertical speed every step. So I actually think it's a tiny bit slow, so I'm gonna increase that, let's say 0.6, and then let's just run it again. So let's just see what it looks like now. So that's actually a tiny bit faster, which is good. Okay then, so now we've got that, what we want to do, then want to check a collision. So we can close this room window now. Actually, beforehand, let's just move him above a block. If you remember from the last couple of videos, we set the block to solid. That enabled Game Maker's collision system inside the block itself, so that the player can collide with it. We need that enabled, so leave that checked. But what we're going to do, we're actually going to go and let me just find where it says it. I think, is it that one? Yeah, to my knowledge, it's this one. It's a small arrow and it's got a vertical line against it. Simply click and drag that across and put it below the vertical speed, and then it'll come up with this new window, check collision. So what we want to do, we actually want to check if the object is going to collide with it. The problem is, when most people develop collision systems, what they do, they actually check if the collision has occurred after it's collided and then offset the object back to its original position. But we don't want to do that, because the problem is it makes it jumpy and essentially unrealistic. You're not just gonna fall straight through a floor and then teleport back up to the top again. You want to stop immediately when you hit the ground. So what we're actually going to do, we're going to check in front of the object if it's going to collide, and then set its speed to 0 when it's collided. That's known as pixel perfect collision as well. So to do this, if we see the y in this, the y-axis, so what that's doing, if we type in v-speed here, what it's actually doing, it's getting the current variable of v-speed and adding that to the object's coordinates below it, and then it's checking that position. So in the next step, it's going to move by a total of v-speed, but because we've already checked that far in front of it, then it's essentially going to stop in the correct place. So the last thing we need to do, just simply check relative as well, and then oh wait, actually no, we don't need to check that, sorry, ignore that. And oh wait, yes we do need to check it, thinking about it. Ignore my thought process there. So yeah, and then we want only solid, so it's going to collide with our solid block instance. So hit OK, and then the next thing we want to do, there's a couple of things we need to think about here. The next thing we want to do, where it says move to contact in direction, it's under jump in the move tab, it just took me a bit of time to find that. Drag and drop it across and put it in there. Now, there's something I need to talk about here. The shapes that have got like an octagon, or a circle, whatever you want to regard it as, versus the square, they're actually two different things. Let's just ignore this for the time being, let's hit OK. But the octagon, what it is, it's actually, it's a question. So essentially it's asking a certain thing. But a square, what that is doing, that is actually setting something, like a variable or anything. And when we state a question and there is a statement below it telling it to set something, the question will only perform the action which is directly underneath the question. And the way we get around this, we go to control, because we want it to actually execute two things if the collision occurs, not one. So there should be like braces here. They actually might be like green arrows in the default game maker skin, but simply drag one above it like so, and then drag one below like that. What that is going to do, that is going to create a block of code, and anything that's inside of the block will be executed by that one question. So we're actually going to need that for the purpose of this. So the first thing we need to do, we need to move the object to contact in direction. But the direction is actually going to equal the direction of the actual player. So if it's moving downward, its current direction is downward. So we want to move them downward to the point where they stop moving when they hit the floor. So yeah, that is rather confusing, sorry, but yeah, you should understand it. The next thing, the maximum, that is the maximum distance it can move. So this is like 5 pixels essentially. So, and then we want again solid objects as well. So hit OK, and then the next thing we need to do, and the final thing for that matter, is set the vertical speed. Now, we've already set the vertical speed here, so why are we setting it again? Well, we're basically stopping the object if it is collided. So, because this vertical speed is below this one, it will actually be overridden by this one. And simply all you need to do is leave vertical speed and set it to 0, because that will stop the object. So now, if we run the game, it will hopefully have working collision. And he stops, pixel perfectly. So, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, like, yeah, you have now implemented your first successful collision system. I'm actually going to leave the jump mechanic and the horizontal collision for the next video, because the jumping will actually be slightly buggy without the horizontal collision enabled as well. But it's actually surprisingly easy to get horizontal collision working after we've set all this up. So, but until then, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.